Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of July 1st, 2025. We're going to call this meeting to order at 6:01, sorry. All right. We have the first item is we'd like to please welcome our Commissioner Kanjula. Welcome to the Planning Commission. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much.
We'll hear more as we go. All right, roll call. Can we please conduct the roll call?
Commissioner Alpert,
Here.
Commissioner Avila,
Here.
Commissioner Kanjula,
Here,
Chair Kuznick.
I am here. Thank you. All right, item number 3, Pledge of Allegiance. Can we all stand, please? And we will recite the pledge. Okay, ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you very much. Item number 3.1, nominations of officers. Nomination of the 2025-2026 Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair. Do we have a nomination for our chair? I
I
would-
can nominate Gary for that.
Okay, do we have a second? Go for it.
I second that.
Excellent. Should we take this vote right now?
Yes,
You
please.
Okay. So you'll have to push the button.
So you're the motions of.
Yes.
No. It's a little bit of a delay.
Here we go.
Yep, we got it.
All right, so the motion passes 4-0. So Commissioner Albert, congratulations. There you go.
Don't put me the script.
Yeah, I'm done. No, just kidding.
The gavel's good, but the script is better.
That's right.
Okay, well, thank you for nominating and electing me as chair. I do appreciate it, and I will do my best to keep our meetings running and having as much fun and doing as good a job as Commissioner Kuznick has the past year. At this point, it's time to nominate a vice chair. Do we have a nomination for the position of vice chair for the upcoming?
Yes, I will nominate Miss Avila.
Okay, and do we have a second?
I can second that.
Great, thank you. Okay, now go ahead and take a vote.
Oh, where's my? Is yours
Hold
popped up?
on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you take an oral vote for this
Perfect.
item, please?
Thank you.
Perfect.
Commissioner Avila,
Yes.
Commissioner Kanjula,
Yes,
Commissioner Kuznick,
Yes.
Chair Alpert.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes 4-0-0-1. Okay, item 3, congratulations. Commissioner Huff.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you for being chair. That's all.
Never know what you.
Yes, okay, why don't we go ahead and move along? First of all, next item is recognition of Chair Kuznick. I'll start, Jean. This is I believe the second or third time you've been chair, and you keep getting more and more comfortable with the gavel. I think you brought a style and a level of tone to all of our meetings, and that was appreciated. It was kind. I think when the public especially came to our meetings, I think you always felt and made them feel welcome and appreciated. And I have always admired that about you. And I know you're not leaving, so we're not saying goodbye, but we are, going to miss you as the chair, as we move forward on what we have before us.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That was really nice.
Okay, does anyone have any other comments they'd like to share?
Well, my first term as the chair was all on Zoom. And I got to sit here at the last meeting before my term was out, so that I got to say that I got to be in the city council chambers. And so this was a little bit different. Appreciate it. It is, it's a bit of a I wouldn't say a circus, but there's a lot of moving parts up here that we try to not have that that's happening. But I was wise enough to watch some very capable chairs in my tenure do this job. And so, I was a very good student and I had very good teachers. So thank you so much. And thank you to staff for your hard work for us too. Okay, there we have it.
Yes,
And for Ms. Kuznick, we thank you for your service as chair. We do appreciate it. And I remember our conversations about how nervous you always were, but you were very gracious and handled the role very, very well. And on behalf of the city, I'd like to present you with a plaque for your year of service as chair.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you. That's lovely. Thank you so much. My husband's not even home watching this. So, he's on the road to North Carolina right now.
okay. Well,
Okay.
congratulations, Jean. We will miss you. Item 3.3, this is slightly sadder because we're not just changing seats, we're actually saying goodbye to two commissioners tonight. First, we had the pleasure of, or the sadness of saying goodbye to Commissioner Curtis, who was not able to join us tonight, but, and we did say some very nice things about Commissioner Curtis. He will be missed, but I think we will all appreciate the time he spent with us and are sorry to see that his work commitments took over his life a little bit more than he would have liked. So he had to sadly not reapply, but we will miss Dave. And then secondly, it's our opportunity to recognize Commissioner Wallace. And would you
Here we go.
get that part?
Okay. There you go. So Commissioner Wallace, there you are. All right. This,
Yes,
I
of
haven't
course. I
decided
think so.
yet.
Yeah, I think so.
I think I'm still,
I think you can come
I'm
up
still
with- you
feeling
can-
bossy here. The City Council of the City of San Ramon Certificate of Recognition presented to Eric Wallace in recognition of his years of service to the Planning Commission. Now, this is important for those who are watching or in the audience. From 2009 to 2025. So it is hard to describe how much influence this man has had on the nature and look of this city, the wisdom that you have brought to this dais, watching you in action, learning from you. I was serious about that. And just, it's just been an honor to sit up here with you and see how you prepare and what you've done for the city. And so we have this. I'm sure there's more. So shall we do parting gifts now, or shall he get his chance to opine?
Do a picture with former Commissioner Wallace and the members of the commission too. So we can do that now.
Okay.
Let's do that now.
Just come down here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
3 minutes.
Chairman's discretion to change that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see, I think probably. I think that we're two on each side to balance. That way, okay. Well, wait a minute, we can't have such segregation.
I know.
Well, we're still voting. The most.
Okay.
You rehearse this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Jake, there's more to come, so.
More to come, okay, it's not explode, so, okay. Thank you.
All right. You want to talk?
Sure, I do want to talk. I want to. So although his certificate said 2009 or so for Planning Commission, we all know that Eric was around before that. And in July of 2016, Eric was attending as the Planning Commission liaison to Economic Development Advisory Committee. And I used to recall him standing up and giving his little liaison report. When we were upstairs after we moved to this building, he would stand up at one of the big city maps and point out all the things that the planning commission was working on. And he connected all of those things. And Eric, I think I recall that was the time that convinced me that I wanted to be on the planning commission, because the planning commissioners actually knew what was going on. The advisory committee, while terrific, only looked at a little part of the city. And what you brought to EDAC, at least that I saw, was how the dots all connected. It all has to come together someplace, and that was the place that it was. So I can say personally, you were inspirational to my own journey in deciding that I wanted to come to the planning commission. And then the second memory I have is I started going to the planning commission's meetings at least a year before I ever got brave enough to apply. And I recall you always making the comment, we need to get the meeting going because Sons of Anarchy is on tonight. And that caused me to eventually start watching that show. And 9 years later, or whatever, I did watch that show. I never bought a motorcycle, but I did watch that show, and as Gene has said, your level of preparation and your questioning and how you saw things, after the meetings, I would almost always wonder, why didn't I think of that? And so that always gave me kind of a goal to achieve. So, as we move through the years, not only did you continue to be a mentor from the dais by how you asked questions, how you explained what we were working on, over time you became a friend. And so that to me is more important than all of the things that we've done, is that I can now consider you a friend. And I appreciate that sincerely, Eric. And I know you'll continue to stay busy, but maybe you'll have Tuesday nights off once in a while. So thank you for that.
Anything else? Go ahead. Oh.
Well, I've only known you for a few months now, since March of this year, but it's been really great to get to know you, Eric. I truly always appreciated all the comments and all the dots that you connected and all the history that you bring with you since 2009. That's pretty impressive, being a planning commissioner for that long. And I truly don't think that planning commission will be the same without you. And I also hope to continue to see you some days here with some public input. Thank you.
I'm brand new, so this is the first time I'm meeting you in person. But I have seen a lot of your videos on Planning Commission that you were there, and very good questions. I've learned a lot during those meetings. So thank you very much for your service to the city.
I figured out how to turn it on down here. I've never been here before, I don't think. First of all, I wanted to thank our new commissioner, and you're absolutely right. This is the first time we've met. And I appreciate your applying and your willingness to go through. And I'm sure that if you haven't been told already, one of the other commissioners will acquaint you with the size of the packages that we get on Thursday or Friday to go through. So thank you for your anticipated service over the next 4 years, and I wish you the best. For Gary, Jean, and Betty, thank you for not only being colleagues, really good colleagues, but thank you for also being friends. And as I will briefly explain, the latter is maybe as important as the former is on this. This is my 26th, according to Debbie, year that I have been on a city commission or committee. I started in 1999 or early 2000. I forget, that was a long time ago, when 36 of our residents were picked to draft our city's general plan, the General Plan Review Commission. And as I was talking to Debbie earlier, she remembers because she was a staff person that worked on that project. And it is still, I believe, if not the only, certainly one of the very few general plans in California that was actually drafted by the citizens as opposed to the city council. And in fact, not only was it drafted by the citizens, the city council could not make any changes on it. All they were allowed to do was to present it to the voters for approval or disapproval. And it was approved by about 75% of the vote. And the guts of that general plan are still in effect now. It, of course, gets updated every 5 years or as is necessary. But if you compare the current general plan to the one we did for 2020, the guts are still the same. After I served in the General Plan Review Committee, I went on to EDAC, which is what Commissioner Alpert mentioned. And that was because I had been the chairman of the Economic Development Committee on the General Plan Review Commission. So it was natural to do that. And I served on EDAC until I became a member of the Planning Commission. And EDAC was, for many years, sort of the recruitment ground for the Planning Commission. Because while I was on EDAC, two of my fellow commissioners who served when I was chairman were Harry Sachs and Phil Alone. Now, Harry and Phil also went up to the city council. So of this group, I was sort of the underachiever. I became on the Planning Commission. I was told in 2009, I always thought it was February of 2010 because that's what I remember. But I had an advantage when I first sat up there that nobody else has had, I don't think. The chairman of the Planning Commission at that time was Donna Kurger, who had been the chair of the General Plan Review Commission when I was chair of the Economic Development Committee. One of the other commissioners was Dennis Veers, who was the chair of the Land Use Committee on the General Plan Review Commission. The two other commissioners were Harry Sachs and Phil Alone, who were served on the EDAC when I was the chair of that committee. And we drafted the Economic Strategic Plan for the city of San Ramon, which we are still updating and still use, as a number of you know, because we did an update of that recently. So I've been on the city commissioner or committee for like 25 years. Quick story. The first meeting we had of the Planning Commission when I was on, we had the meeting, and then we went down to Monterey for the Planners Conference. Now, in those days, the city would send the entire Planning Commission down there. So we met ahead of time, and then we had the meetings, and then we went out to dinner. And at that dinner, after the dinner, I learned two things. The first is you can't judge a book by its colors because Harry Sachs was a teacher. Phil Alone was a manager at Kaiser. And being naive as I was and not having really examined him earlier, I thought, okay, Harry must be the progressive. He's a teacher, right? And Phil, he's a manager at a big corporation. He must be the conservative in the group. Wrong. Exact opposite. The second thing I learned by going to the meeting after the dinner was this. The Planning Commission had then and has continued since then, as far as I know, a tradition of after meetings to meet socially for a drink or a hors d'oeuvre or something afterwards. Now, of course, we never discuss any city business or anything that might come in front of the city. We don't want to violate the it says Brown Act here, to talk about that. But the purpose of that was to develop a personal relationship between members of the commission. And that's important because, as you have seen and you will see as we go forward, sometimes there are disagreements among commissioners as to the proper approach to take. What's important to remember is that we are all professionals up here, staff included. And it's important to remember, while we may have disagreements, and sometimes they may get vehement disagreements, they are professional disagreements. They are not personal. The fact that you disagree with someone doesn't mean they're a bad person, just means you have a different viewpoint. And I think that is really important to remember because sometimes, as you know, our discussions may get heated from time to time, but you leave the heat here when you walk out of that room. And that's really an important thing to remember to do. Now, some of you are going to be here 2 years, some of you are going to be 4. And there's a lot of work that you're going to be doing. You are witnessing, as you'll hear tonight, we are turning the biggest business park in Northern California into, this is not a pejorative, sort of Doherty Valley Light, because we are going to have residential where there used to be office buildings. Chevron will no longer be an office park. It'll be a gas station down the street. The hardest part that you will find, I think, in the next 4 years, and probably starting almost immediately, is how we meet our goals and mandates from our friends up in Sacramento to develop housing We're at the same time maintaining a commercial base in San Ramon that enables us to pay for the parks, pay for the streets, and the other things that make San Ramon a place people want to move to and willing to pay the prices they have to in order to live here. That is going to be the hardest thing for you to develop, and that is, in large part, a land use decision. And that is why you are here. And the city council obviously is the final arbiter of things like that. But over the years that I've been on the planning commission, one thing that I remember being told by virtually everybody in the city council, from Dave Hudson, who was the longest serving council member, all the way down, was the city council depends on the planning commission to do the grunt work for land use decisions. That's what they rely on you for, because if you've gone to a city council meeting, you know what they have to go through. They rely on the planning commission to do all the work before they upstream it to the city council. So you have to remember about keeping commercial in San Ramon. Unless you can convince Costco to move south across Camino Ramon, then your problems are solved. So I wish all of you for the next 2 or 4 years, good luck in what you're doing, and Godspeed to all of you and to the city.
Now, Eric, we do have some lovely parting gifts here. Come on back down. So we decided that the appropriate thing was that each of us would provide you with some lovely libations.
Thank you.
So don't drink it all at one sitting. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, well, thank you.
And we have cards.
Oh, well, thank you.
So,
I appreciate that.
and you know, when you pop one open, you can call us up or you can just cheer in our absence.
Hopefully, at some point, we'll get a chance to do something similar again on a personal level, not necessarily.
That's right.
professional.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you also. You were very helpful when I was running for office, and that was really really important. How you helped me get elected. So thank you again for that. So for better, for worse.
Definitely for better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now you go home and watch Sons of Anarchy.
Item 4 is public comments or written communication. At this time, members of the public may address the planning commission on any item not already included in tonight's agenda. If you would like to speak, please fill out a speaker card in the back room and submit it to the recording secretary. As always, we do not take public comments via Zoom. Recording secretary, do we have any speaker cards tonight?
No, no speaker cards or written comment for this item.
Great, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment at this time. Additions and revisions to the agenda. I do believe that we're going to rearrange the agenda slightly, and by moving item 11.1, the Brown Act discussion, to prior to item 9.1. Any concerns, questions about that? If that's fine, great, terrific. We'll go ahead and do that. And then make sure I'm not jumping ahead on any of this stuff. Okay, we'll start.
Through the chair, I completely forgot. City attorneys in the audience, we need a motion to reorganize the agenda.
Okay, we can do that.
Sorry about
okay.
that.
Okay.
Looking at the wheel.
I move that we reorganize the agenda as has been read into the record.
I can second that.
Okay.
Do you want to just take a roll? I'm sorry, I'm not in charge.
No, okay, cool. Okay. Do you want to do a oral
We'll
vote?
do an oral vote,
Okay.
please.
Okay, we can do that.
Commissioner Kandula.
Aye.
Commissioner Kuznick,
Yes.
Vice Chair Avila,
Yes.
Chair Alpert.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion does pass 4-0-0-1. Make sure I'm putting it the right place. Okay, so we are going to not go too out of order here. So item 6.1, consent calendar, minutes of the Planning Commission, regular meeting from June 17th, 2025. Do we have any corrections, additions, changes to the agenda? You know, not, if we could have a motion to accept them as presented.
I motion to approve the minutes.
I can second that.
Okay.
These are old. Okay. No. There we go.
Okay, there we go.
That was the very first one. There we go. Okay. We're waiting for me. Okay, well, yeah,
Okay,
okay.
so motion does pass 4-0-0-0. Okay, now we can jump to item 11.1, the Brown Act presentation and presentation by City Attorney Martin License. Welcome, Martin.
Well, good evening.
You need the mic.
Yeah.
Better?
That's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Once again, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I am Martin License, the city attorney. I have not met our newest commissioner, and we really haven't had a chance to speak too much, Betty, but I'm sure we'll be talking in the near future about the Brown Act and all things development. And with apologies to our applicants this evening that will have to sit through this Brown Act presentation. But I do like to do these every now and then to give our commissions and our council and our committees a reminder of what our obligations are under the Ralph M. Brown Act. And pictured here is actually Ralph M. Brown. Back in the 50s, as a member of the state Senate, he determined that there were too many backroom deals going forward under local commissions and local councils. There were too many decisions being made without the opportunity for public input. So the Ralph M. Brown Act was born, and as it said there, it is the intent of the law that the actions of public commissions, boards, and councils be taken openly and that their deliberations be conducted openly. So the general rule is that the commission cannot hold a meeting to discuss commission business unless the meeting meets certain criteria. It has to be noticed and it has to be within the city limits. There has to be a quorum present, which in this case with 4 commissioners, a quorum is 3 commissioners. There also has to be an opportunity for public participation on each and every item that's before the commission. And the discussion has to be limited to those topics that are on the published agenda. So that said, we have to define what a meeting actually is. The 2 major criteria are that there has to be a majority, a quorum present in order to call it a meeting. And this is going to be important when we start to talk about serial meetings later on in the discussion. And then the discussion of any item of commission business or potential commission business comes up. Again, if you're not talking about commission business, or if you are doing a book club or any kind of social gathering, it's okay to talk about the social gatherings amongst yourselves, just not commission business. You don't have to actually take an action for it to be considered a meeting under a Brown Act. There just has to be a simple exchange of information. So there could be no collective briefings, and what I mean by a collective briefing is that you can't meet together, even with staff present, as a quorum. So when staff meets with the commission, it may meet with individual commission members one at a time. But then I would implore each commission member not to discuss what was discussed with staff with each other, because then we're talking about a meeting of the minds between a quorum. And again, we'll talk about serial meetings momentarily. Unilateral written communications are not considered to be collective briefings. So if staff sends an email out to the entire commission, then then that's not considered a meeting under the Brown Act. But we should keep in mind that any communications that are between commissioners, that even if they don't constitute a meeting, they are public records typically, and that means that they are disclosable to the general public. Now we'll get to what a serial meeting is. Serial meetings are considered meetings under the Brown Act and are therefore not allowed. And there are certain types of serial meetings. And what I mean by a serial meeting is any meeting that takes place between between a quorum of the commission, between any three of you. But it doesn't have to take place all in one place or all at one time. So if we have Chair Alpert discuss something with Commissioner Kuznick, and then Commissioner Kuznick the next day says, hey, Chair Alpert and I were talking, and says this to Commissioner Avila, then we have a meeting of the minds between three people, even though no two people were in the same room at the same time, and the meeting took place over the course of several days. So that's an example of what's called a daisy chain. Another example might be that Chair Alpert speaks to Commissioner Kuznick, and then the next day speaks to Commissioner Avila. It's the same thing. There's still a meeting of the mind between three commissioners out of the four. And I left you out of the example on this one because I got to give you a chance to mess up. You've only been a commissioner now for 15 minutes or so. So there are a couple of pitfalls associated with the serial meeting. The first is emails. So as I said before, if I send an email out to each and every commissioner, that's fine. We typically don't send emails from staff to the entire commission that can be replied all, because once you reply all, then that becomes a discussion. And once it's a discussion, it becomes a meeting because there are four people on this email chain and it's going back and forth. That becomes a serial meeting under the law and is not allowed. Now, social media presents a kind of its own problem. If one commissioner posts something, say and I'm going to be old fashioned and say on Facebook, because that's pretty much all I know, then and then a second commissioner just hits like. If it's about city business, well, now you've got a meeting of the minds between two commissioners. If a third commissioner hits like on that same comment that's been posted, now we have three commissioners who have come to some sort of decision outside of the purview of the general public, outside of the scope of what's on the agenda. So for the meeting, there is no agendized item. So we have to be very careful about social media and about how we discuss city business and broadcast our discussions. There are obligations under the Brown Act regarding our meeting agendas and the way meetings adhere to those agendas. Our meeting agendas themselves, staff and the city attorney's office typically take care of those obligations. Those include the posting requirements. In other words, we have to make the agendas available to the public with at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting. The agenda content requirements and the information detail, that just means that we have to have a brief discussion of each item that's going to be discussed, and that discussion description has to have enough information to allow the public to discern what exactly is going to be discussed during that time. Now, the commission's responsibility is to limit the discussion to the agenda. Don't let the scope of the discussion go outside of what's been advertised that's going to be talked about during the meeting. Public comment must be on all of the agenda items, and it's the chair's responsibility to make sure that the general public has a chance to discuss the item that's next on the agenda. And then, of course, there's the public comment period that opens each and every meeting. And that period is for any discussion that the general public wants to discuss regarding commission business. It is within the chair's discretion to cut off a comment that has nothing to do with commission business. But as long as I've been here, I haven't seen that being necessary. Okay, so now it's time for the hypothetical, our quiz. The commission holds a public hearing to consider a controversial proposal. After the last of the public testimony has been heard, the chair says she just checked her Facebook page and saw that 15 people, including 2 of the 5 commission members, I'm going to assume that there's going to be a 5th at some point, responded in agreement to her Facebook post, which outlined her concerns with the proposal. She also says that one person who has a degree in economics commented on her Facebook page that the proposal poses certain risks that staff failed to disclose. Are there issues with this scenario? Okay. Well, we spotted actually 3 of them. Issue number 1 is regarding the serial meeting as described about the social media. It's a quorum who shared concerns on Facebook. So consider limiting Facebook discussion to non-commission business. There's also a due process issue. There was a significant fact concerning the unreported risk that was disclosed after the public had its opportunity to testify. So the public had no opportunity to say anything about this new information that came out. Staff also didn't have an opportunity to respond, but typically staff can interrupt the proceedings and give a response. But when that kind of information comes out right in the middle of the meeting, unfortunately, staff has no opportunity to do the research to either agree with or rebut that testimony. So, and any testimony like that does need to be brought to the attention of staff before it's presented in open session. Finally, there's another due process issue that the chair posted in her comments on Facebook before the meeting. If during that meeting, and this is less of a Brown Act issue and more of a conflict of interest issue, if she posted that she intended to vote no on the project, well, now she's demonstrated her common law bias on the issue, which would probably require her to recuse. If at any point you make it public that you're planning to vote one way or the other, no matter what the testimony is, that denies the applicant the opportunity to have a full and fair hearing on the issue. And so that's a requirement where you would likely have to recuse yourself. Just talked about what you can't do. Now we'll talk a little bit about what you can. The commission can go to conferences together. But even if you're talking about something that's a part of that might be related to commission business, you really can't discuss commission business even if it's part of an exercise in some sort of gathering. Too often we have commissioners, and I've even seen it, stand up and say, well, in my city, we did this. Try to avoid that. You can also attend community meetings, but the same rule applies. Other legislative bodies, the commission can, for example, attend meetings at the city council. If there's a quorum present, it's from a public perception standpoint, it's better if they're not seen gathering as a quorum together during that time. And it's also, you should avoid making public comment regarding commission business during a council meeting, even if it's before the council, because the same rule applies. You're having a discussion with a quorum of the commission. And then there's social and ceremonial events Again, same rule applies. You can attend, weddings, funerals, parties, etc., but no discussion of commission business. Okay, so we'll talk about the hammer now. So any member of a legislative body who attends a meeting of that legislative body where the action is taken in violation of any provision of the Brown Act, where the member intends to deprive the public of information to which the member knows or has reason to know the public is entitled. So in other words, there has to be intent to deceive the public, essentially. Then you're guilty of a misdemeanor. Then that's 6 months in jail or $100,000. Now, that's the law. From a practical standpoint, I haven't seen anyone penalized as such, but there are other reasons not to violate the Brown Act other than the potential penalty. First of all, you don't want to be the first one. Secondly, if the meeting violates the Brown Act, and this I have seen, there's a potential for the decision of the commission to be voided. And there are the potential for criminal sanctions. So the city has an interest in not violating the Brown Act, because we don't want to have to repeat ourselves and go through this process multiple times, or find ourselves in a position where we no longer have a commission that can make a decision on one or more of the topics that there's been a Brown Act violation on. And then, of course, the city can be sued either by the DA or by the general public. So I'm going to give you some real world examples here. There were 4 Pomona commissioners. They basically received admonishment for basically doing a social media Brown Act violation by a serial meeting. They all posted on Nextdoor regarding possible reuse of Pomona's city stables. They were admonished by the city council, and they were directed to study and follow the Brown Act. They were tortured with lectures just like this one. And so the city, but the city attorney did say there was no proof of intent, which we had talked about intent before. So there was no criminal action, basically just the bad publicity. And then this one was a little bit closer to home. The judges actually ruled for Lafayette against a claim of bias. This was in a land use decision where the city met in closed session. And I didn't discuss closed session here because that doesn't really apply to the commission. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is that this was a challenge under the Brown Act. And the court ultimately found that the closed sessions that did not violate the Brown Act. So here the city did not violate the Brown Act, but they were dragged into court over the issue, and the cost of the city to defend that court case was $680,000. So there's a very good reason not only to avoid Brown Act violations, but to avoid the very appearance of a Brown Act violation and to avoid invitation for litigation just like this one. And then here's one of the worst ones that I've found. Foster City Council member Jahani, he was a project proponent, but he also went to the city manager, told the city manager, oh, I did mention he was a council member. He mentioned that he had the support already of 2 other council members. So he has already violated the Brown Act. And by all appearances, it looks like he actually had an intent to violate the Brown Act and to deceive the public. It turns out that he had discussed the redevelopment proposal with not 2 others, but 3 other council members. That matter did go to the district attorney. He found there were Brown Act violations. Ultimately, he didn't pursue criminal sanctions. And the reason he didn't pursue criminal sanctions was because the city council ultimately didn't hear that item. The project was dropped. So first of all, any interest that Councilmember Jahani may have had in that, he lost because that project no longer could go forward or didn't go forward. Secondly, he was he was on his own when it came to defending himself against whatever accusations the DA might have thrown at him or the city. And when I mean on his own, I mean he had to lawyer up himself. The city does not pay for your legal defense because the city is victimized as much as the public is when there is a Brown Act violation. So unless the city council votes by majority to pay for your legal fees, which is highly unlikely, then you have to realize that you need to be careful for your own self-interest when it comes to the Brown Act. This is somewhat related to the Brown Act, but I wanted to touch, because we have one newish commissioner and one brand new commissioner, that we could talk just very briefly about Robert's Rules of Order. The basic principles are about courtesy, balancing the rights of the participants, both the commissioners and the public, and to allow the minority to be heard, but for the majority to rule. So the general principles are only one subject at a time, maybe before a group at one time, which is why we have the agendas and why we have, separate topics on for each agenda item. Only one person to speak at any given time, and it's the chair who controls who holds the floor. So if there are two people speaking at once, we look to the chair to decide who it is that holds the floor for that particular time. But also we look to the chair to make sure that both people who wanted to speak get their opportunity to do so. All commissioners have equal rights to be heard, and only commissioners, as you know, can make motions. The rights of the majority, again, must be protected, but the will of the majority must prevail, and the Brown Act also applies. And we've already gone through a couple of motions this evening, so I think everybody's got the hang of it. But every now and then there are some quirks about a motion. Typically, there's a motion and a second. The chair typically restates the motion so that everybody understands and that the record has what the motion was actually trying to state. Often when there's somewhat of a complex motion, it's not exactly clear. So before there's a vote taken, we look to the chair to restate it and make sure that everybody's clear on what they're voting on. There's not necessarily a vote directly after the motion and the second. You can debate the motion, you can propose changes to the motion, but then ultimately, if there are changes proposed, again, we look to the chair to restate the amended motion, and then we have our vote. And then the vote is announced, and the result of the vote and any instructions that may follow will come. And that pretty much ends my presentation. If there are any questions, please ask the city attorney before you discuss or bring anything to the public light. And I'll thank you. And I think I saw that we do have a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. I do have a couple of questions. You asked not to discuss any future commission topics or how they're going to vote, but what about the ones that are passed, that have been voted?
Well, that's a little tricky because are you and you're talking about them with other commission members, correct?
Other commission members, other citizens of the city?
Oh, yeah, you can certainly talk with people outside of the commission, with members of the public. If it in any way relates to, like I was opposed to phase one of this project, and phase two is still pending, then you have to sort of be careful about what you say about phase one, one of those types of things. But in general, yes, you can talk about past decisions, and there's no common law bias when it comes to discussing what happened in the past.
Another question is, many of the commissioners, we send an email out saying that the city business, such as art and wind festival or opening of the bridge, hey, Ms. Aliela, would you be attending this? And would I, if I send that email to all the commissioners saying who all are attending the opening for the bridge, would that be considered a violation of Brown Act?
I would say no, but I wouldn't get in the habit of hitting reply all. It just when it becomes a habit, every now and then you slip and hit it. Generally, though, we the city don't send out emails, at least not that I'm aware of, that give you the opportunity to hit reply all. So you would have to actually really try to include each and every member in your replies to the city.
The previous question on decisions that have happened, I would probably err to not do it because, we could approve something in 2015, but it's not built or it hasn't been built yet. So it will come back or could come back. And if you start to, I think, have a discussion about something, even though you think it's in the past, it may not really be in the past, so, just, I would be careful about doing a postmortem on any of the decisions that we make. If you want to talk about, the building of the Golden Gate Bridge, if you had a role in that, that's probably okay. But pretty much, the other topics that we decide here, things don't happen and get closed and shut down that quick.
That's a
the
very good
organization-
point. Thank
yeah.
you.
One final question from me, if there is nobody else. Sorry, being the new one, I'm asking all the questions. In a Facebook discussion or a private meeting with the citizens or my community as a HOA president, I'm talking to my fellow community members on a Facebook or anything, and they want to influence me on one way versus other. Would that be considered a violation of Brown Act?
If the communication is just directed toward you, there's no Brown Act violation whatsoever. If you're not the one that's doing the communication, then you can absorb input from the public. That's part of what you're here to do.
Even when I have initiated this topic or in the group, it's just a chain that keeps on going.
Okay,
right?
so if you've initiated the topic, hey, what do you think about this upcoming proposal? Then that's when it starts to get a little bit dicey. I would avoid using social media for that type of purpose, for the simple reason that, one, you could, for two reasons. One, for the common law bias reason, which if you give away your position on the topic, then there could be a challenge because you're biased and can't bring an open mind to the meeting. But also, secondly, there's always the chance and the opportunity for other commission members to see what you're posting and if they do an errant thumbs up or decide that they vehemently disagree with you and can't resist posting some sort of argument against, well, then now you're having a meeting of the minds.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Martin. And I know you're always available to explain any questions that we have,
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
So,
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so in all of the confusion about rearranging the agenda and hoping to help city attorney get home tonight, we skipped over two important items on the agenda. Let me go back and catch those real quick. Item 7, continuing items after closing of the public hearing. We actually have none. Item 8, continued items open a public hearing. We have none. So now we can get back on schedule. Item 9.1 is a new item. Public hearing Bishop Ranch Affordable Housing Site Development Agreement DA 2025-0001, and we will have a staff report by Lauren Barr, Division Manager.
Good evening. So I have a brief presentation, after which I'm available for questions, and then the applicant also has a presentation. So the project location is 2453 Camino Ramon. This is the Bishop Ranch Service Center, also the site of the recently approved Eden Housing Project. You can see the outline of the property as shown here. So I wanted to talk just briefly about development agreements. California state law allows for cities to enter into development agreements to minimize uncertainty in the approval and development process. These are voluntary contractual arrangements between property owners or the property owner, developers, and the municipality. These agreements contain various aspects such as the development project profile. It also can be responsibilities, duration, performance timelines, and fiscal provisions. These agreements are approved by ordinance of the municipality, so it guarantees certainty and enforceability of the agreement over time. I also wanted to mention that as we go into this process of putting together development agreements, they are reviewed by the city attorney. There's a lot of legal language and contractual language that's put into that, and that's all vetted through the city attorney's office. So in terms of a little bit of background, on January 7th, 2025, Eden Housing filed formal applications for a 200-unit residential project at the Bishop Ranch Service Center. The scale and affordability of the project envisioned a way of addressing affordable housing requirements within Bishop Ranch for some of the previously approved projects. That being that there was a surplus of affordable housing units because it's a 100% affordable project. The inclusionary housing ordinance actually provides for alternatives to constructing affordable units on site. Land dedication is one of those things as proposed tonight. And again, it allows for consideration of modifications of the numbers of affordable units, the affordability levels, and other provisions of the inclusionary ordinance. So on May 7th of 2025, Sunset Development Company, the property owner, filed applications for this development agreement before you tonight. And this was in anticipation of the approval of the 200-unit project, as mentioned before, for Eden Housing. And then on June 3rd of this year, the Planning Commission approved Resolution 0425, thereby approving the 200-unit Eden project. So the development agreement before you includes some specific requirements and standards for how affordable housing will be treated in the future. It addresses the affordable housing requirements associated with the approved Bishop Ranch 7 and 11 projects, as well as portions of the City Walk project. That's BR 1A and BR 3A located within Bishop Ranch. It also allows for the dedication of land to facilitate the development of the Eden project. So some of the key provisions are an increased number of affordable units. Currently, all the covered sites referenced above have a 15% inclusionary requirement. The covered units for BR 7 and 11 will be increased. The rate will be increased to 22.5%, and it's 16% for the City Walk apartment projects, which this represents 34 additional units at low and very low income. And in addition, because Eden Housing project has its own set of approvals, there's an additional 30 units associated with that project approval. So in total, 64 units. As I mentioned, there's a higher level of affordability. So some of the for sale units, which include moderate income units, will be converted to low and very low income units, which are rental, which also are more accessible to a greater number of people because they don't run with the owner, they turn over at a different rate than a for sale type project. There's also a provision that requires a payment of fees to the city's Affordable Housing Fund. This is a $3,000 per each market rate unit at BR 7 and 11. And that represents $1.1 million estimated. The term of the agreement is 5 years, and there's an additional provision with the city's approval to extend for an additional 5 years if the project's moving forward and getting close to moving on. And then lastly, there's provisions that relate to failure to perform. In addition to consultation, there's a requirement to dedicate the site to the city or the city's designated nonprofit developer. Included in that would be some site improvements such as rough grading the property and payment of development impact fees. So again, that's the surety that comes with this particular agreement. So at this point, we recommend that the Planning Commission receive the staff report, open the public hearing, take public testimony, close the hearing, discuss and deliberate, and adopt Resolution 0725 recommending City Council approval of the development agreement. And that approval would also include ultimately an ordinance that would be presented to the City Council for consideration, introduction, and then ultimately adoption. So with that, I'm available for questions, or we can have the applicant do their presentation, whatever the will of the commission.
Maybe we should get the whole story and, the whole presentation and listen to the applicant first, and I'm sure we'll have questions.
Not sure I'm in the right place. Did that work for you? I don't think I quite got full screen, but.
Good evening, Chair Alpert and members of the Planning Commission. On behalf of Sunset Development, I'm Stephanie Hill. Thank you for the opportunity to present our Bishop Branch affordable housing proposal this evening. Bishop Branch is evolving into a vibrant, walkable, mixed-use district, bringing together offices, retail, entertainment, homes, and open space. This transformation is driven by a long-term vision that thoughtfully integrates new uses within our established office campus. Rather than focusing on individual parcels, we are planning holistically across the entire 585-acre property. Over the next 20 years, our residential plan will introduce an inclusive, walkable suburban downtown that complements the existing commercial environment and creates a unified, well-designed community. The proposed housing is intended to serve a wide range of lifestyles, singles, couples, families, and retirees, so residents can choose how and where they want to live. This vision depends on a balanced mix of housing types, including affordable and market rate options, as well as multifamily and single-family homes. Our land plan is centered around 4 premier office campuses: Orchards, formerly BR1, Sycamore, formerly BR3, Shepherd's Glen, formerly BR15, and Lakeside, formerly 2600. City Walk, our plan for 4,500 residential homes in mid-rise buildings, spans over 135 acres between Bollinger Canyon Road, Camino Ramon, and Executive Parkway. Belmont Village Senior Living is the first of these communities to open. To the north of Executive Parkway, the DMU North Zone features 2 to 3 story single-family homes comparable to Summerhill's City Village. To the south of Bollinger Canyon Road is the DMU South Zone, which includes the former Chevron Park, which is proposed to include 2,500 homes, 125,000 square feet of retail, and 15 acres of parks and open space. Tonight, we are focused on how to achieve the city's 15% inclusionary housing requirement through the creation of thoughtfully located, standalone affordable housing communities. There are currently 3 that are proposed, adjacent to Bishop Branch 7, within the Bishop Branch 8 neighborhood, and within the Chevron Park redevelopment. Our model builds on a successful Bay Area approach, developing standalone affordable rental communities next to for-sale market rate homes. The structure supports long-term integration while fostering a strong sense of place. Research shows that access to housing in resource-rich communities like San Ramon significantly improves outcomes for residents, including educational performance and long-term health. In fact, well-designed and well-managed affordable communities often add value to surrounding neighborhoods. The community we're discussing tonight will meet the affordable requirements for Bishop Branch 7, Bishop Branch 11, and part of City Walk. As Mr. Barr mentioned, last month, the Planning Commission approved the Bishop Branch Affordable Community at 2453 Camino Ramon by Eden Housing. The development includes 200 homes across 2 buildings, 120 family apartments, and 80 senior apartments, age restricted to residents 55 and older. The family building features larger units, with half consisting of 2 and 3 bedroom homes to support a range of household needs. Located next to Bishop Branch 7, the site offers convenient access to jobs, schools, and community amenities, supporting long-term housing stability. Beyond housing, Eden Housing provides tailored programs that promote personal and economic growth. Their resident services are designed for all ages, from youth to seniors, and include support in education, technology access, and health and wellness. Of the 200 homes, 198 will be available to households earning less than 80% of the area median income, households with incomes ranging from $33,000 to $128,000. These homes will serve the very people who make our community function: teachers, healthcare workers, service providers, many of whom currently cannot afford to live within San Ramon. The city's inclusionary housing ordinance allows for land dedication as an alternate compliance option, an important tool to help deliver larger scale affordable communities. Sunset's proposal strengthens affordability in several ways. It increases the total number of affordable homes. The percentage increases from 15% to 22.5% when rental is built in place of for sale, and 15% to 16% to shift City Walk homes. Standalone communities must independently satisfy the city's 15% inclusionary housing requirement. For example, Bishop Branch Affordable is required to provide 30 affordable homes to meet its own affordable obligation, separate from the affordable units for the covered sites. In effect, these are additional homes that would not be provided under the on-site execution. The community serves a deeper range of incomes, from 30% to 80% of the area median income, with an average AMI of 60% due to the requirements to secure tax credit financing. In comparison, the average area median income for the city's inclusionary housing for sale is 74%, and rental homes is 65%. If we look specifically to the for sale homes at Bishop Branch 7 and 11, they are currently approved for 385 homes, with 15% or 58 homes designated as affordable. Our proposal increases the total number of affordable homes to 102, a 76% increase. Of those, 79 homes would serve very low-income households, compared to 20 under the current approvals. For context, the city's regional housing needs allocation includes nearly 1,500 new very low-income homes to be developed by 2031. We've previously discussed the distinctions between rental and ownership affordable housing. One of the challenges with deeply affordable ownership housing is that households often lack the financial reserves to manage unexpected costs, such as rising HOA dues, insurance premiums, or home repairs, which can put them at risk of losing their homes. Rental homes provide greater stability and predictability. Housing costs are fixed, and as residents' incomes grow, they can save for future homeownership. Rental units also require annual income verification to ensure they continue serving qualified households, unlike ownership units, which are only income verified at the time of purchase and tend to serve fewer families over time due to lower turnover. In addition to increasing the number of deeply affordable homes, Sunset will contribute $3,000 per market rate for sale home to the city's housing fund. These funds may be used to support future homeownership opportunities. A key part of this proposal is timing and assurance. Eden Housing is a highly regarded, mission-driven developer with 57 years of experience, 170 communities, and over 25,000 residents. With last month's approval, Eden has begun their financing process. If they are unable to secure financing, the site can be transferred to the city with rough grading complete and impact fees paid. The land will be protected by a development agreement and a regulatory housing agreement, guaranteeing that it's developed as affordable housing. We are at a pivotal moment. The demand for office space is shifting, and we are responding by delivering a more compact, high-quality office environment while also advancing the state's housing goals. We've worked collaboratively with the city throughout our history. The City Walk was created to respond to the state's housing mandates. City Center evolved from a retail concept into a true gathering place, with events like this year's Holiday Festival attracting 7,000 people, most of them local, to the celebration. Lakeside's once private land is now open to the public, with walking paths used daily by residents. This affordable housing proposal is the next chapter in our shared evolution. We are committed to building these homes quickly, responsibly, and in a way that responds to the values of this community. I appreciate your time this evening. I'm also joined by Eden Housing to answer any questions or comments. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and see what questions we have for either staff or the applicant? If somebody wants to go first, or we can start us off. Somebody want to ask a few questions? Mr. Kuznick, do you want to go ahead and take a stab?
Well, thank you both for all the presentations, and I do have a couple of questions. Okay, so in the affordable unit count, it would seem to me that the Eden Housing was always going to create 200 units. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we do not transfer these affordable units from the other for sale properties and the other rentals, and they remained within those developments, then the 200 are still there, correct?
That's if they get constructed. And funding is a consideration of that. I don't have the details of whatever relationships between the contributor sites to this in terms of helping subsidize construction, but again, the assumption is that or at least your assumption is that the project would be approved either way. Part of it is just the challenge to get the economics to work. I don't know if the applicant wants to speak a little bit about viability without transfer of units.
So within our proposal, we are providing the land at no cost to Eden Housing, which is a function of being able to shift the affordable homes from Bishop Branch 7, Bishop Branch 11, and a portion of City Walk, which allows for us financially to give the land at no cost to Eden Housing. And so if there's not an ability to shift the affordable homes from those covered sites to Eden site, the financial feasibility of free land is impacted, which impacts our ability to move forward with the Eden Housing development.
Well, there's a different question that comes from that. But I can't formulate it quite yet. So go ahead. Questions?
Mr. Kangela.
Thank you, Chair. So just to get my math right, there are 190 units in BR7. 15% of that is approximately 28. So 28 units
I believe it's
and
29.
29 units from 11. And with 1A, BR 1A and 3A, how much would that be? How many units would that be?
The current proposal contemplates 506 homes from City Walk. The current approvals on BR1A is related for 383 homes, and we have an approval on BR3A for Avalon, which is 457 homes. So the City Walk support exceeds slightly more than the individual community approved on BR1A or on BR3A.
So if I understand correctly, 1A has 383 units and 3A has 457 units.
Yes, that's correct.
And 15% of that would be affordable housing.
Yes, that's correct.
So all 200 units would be affordable housing in Eden project?
198 are affordable to managers units. One thing I'll just mention is that the affordable housing requirement for City Walk, the entire affordable housing requirement for those two projects, Avalon and related, cannot be accommodated under this proposal of the development agreement, only a portion of them. And there are provisions within the development agreement that talk about a first come, first serve situation. So a portion of those units would either need to be built in the City Walk project or transferred somewhere else under a different proposal. So again, it's not every unit in City Walk, it's just what can be accommodated in the affordable housing project.
Thank you.
I have a lot of questions.
Sure.
Okay, so I guess to just kind of piggyback off that last question regarding City Walk that Commissioner just asked, the first come, first serve basis, I guess, what does that necessarily mean? Like first come, first served?
Well, so what it means is that we have two projects that are under review for planning. The financing of those projects isn't entirely clear in the sense of the City Walk projects, whether it's Avalon will go first or whether related will go first. And so ultimately, how that allocation of units gets done isn't really the city's
Yeah.
discretion. But we just know that all the units of those two projects cannot be accommodated along with 7 and 11, BR 7 and 11. So they're going to have to decide what ratio gets assigned to each project.
So to go off the applicant's presentation, based on the increasing the affordability to 22.5%, she's saying BR7 and BR11, that would be the 43 plus 44, but then it also has to provide its own 15%, so it's 102. And then this site is 200. And then 2 of those are manager units. So 198 affordable units minus the 102. So 198 minus the 102 is however many units that this site would be able to receive in total from City Walk.
So it's able to, based on the slide in front of you, it's 168 units that are available for credits elsewhere. Because again, the 30 units of the 198 are required for the project itself.
Okay.
And so it's however the 168 units breaks down based on whatever arrangements the developer has with the other projects.
So then there would be like a surplus of 66 units, right? From City Walk that could be transferred over to.
Well, currently there's 81 units from City Walk that can be transferred over. Again, if the slide on the screen has the breakdown of what's anticipated from each project. It's up. Oh, sorry, it's not on the screen. I just moved back to it.
Okay. Okay, so
There you go.
81.
It's slide number 7. So this is the breakdown of the units.
Okay. My other question was for packet page 12, it mentions certain fee waivers for rental housing. It's in the staff report under fiscal analysis, and it says, Additionally, it should be noted that any 100% affordable project with units available to households making less than 80% of area median income is eligible for certain fee waivers under the city's affordable rental housing fee waiver policy. I guess what is that referencing? What are those certain fee waivers?
So there was a policy adopted several years ago for 100% affordable rental housing. And so there are certain city review fees, certain city impact fees that are waived for the 100% affordable projects. And it's considered a city match for funding at state level for grants and funding for affordable housing projects. And so it's again, there's a list of which fees are eligible in the policy. And so they would be eligible for that as well with a 100% affordable project. It
Okay.
meets the income qualifications.
Thank you, Lauren. So one of the things that the DA highlights is the impact fees would be like if they're, if Eden Housing doesn't meet their obligation, they would provide rough grading and impact fees. Do you know what that total amount is for the impact fees? Like, assuming that we have the city match and the waiver for the rental housing?
I don't know off the top of my head. Part of the challenge with that is some of those impact fees are regional fees, traffic fees and the like. And so those change and they're not actually within our discretion to set those rates. But it can be anywhere from, $100,000 per traffic fee to millions of dollars, depending. Rough grading, again, that's just demolition and costs of getting a site ready to go and being ready for construction. But again, I could probably put together an estimate based on current numbers, but depending on the timing of the project, it would change.
Yeah. So, with the development agreement, it states certain fees in here, like the $3,000 per unit for Bishop Ranch 7 and 11. So are we locking it in place? Because I know some development agreements say like, oh, per annual basis, it will go ahead and be, the cost will increase per
That
inflation.
That particular fee is set at 3,000 and it's a voluntary contribution by the developer toward the city's inclusionary, or not inclusionary, the Affordable Housing Fund. And so, again, that was just something that was discussed and negotiated as a way of helping to promote the housing resources within the city, in addition to providing the higher levels of affordability and the additional units.
Okay. So I guess how did that $3,000 like kind of come into fruition? Was that just?
It's a back and forth discussion.
Okay.
There's not a set fee schedule that it relates to it. And so it was subject to discussion and it still is subject to discussion.
And from what I understand correctly, the city doesn't have like an affordable housing in lieu fee.
We do not for residential. It's a must-build requirement currently. We are actually looking at a fee through our Nexus study that's under review right now, but as it stands now, it's a must-build requirement.
Okay. Let's see, hold on. On packet page 25 of the development agreement. Now I'm not finding it, but within the development agreement, it states that it says surplus land units shall be made available to meet the City Walk affordable housing. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. All affordable housing units in the affordable project will be subject to a recorded city affordable housing agreement with the affordability to run for a term of 55 years. So these rental, like Eden Housing, that would only be good for 55 years.
Well,
But have the affordable imposed on the units.
in terms of the deed restriction, it's a 55-year term. I can let Eden or the applicant speak to what their mission is and what their policies are regarding long-term ownership.
Okay, I think that would be good.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Commission. I'm Dixie Bouse with Eden Housing. Little brain.
Okay.
In our agreements that we do with cities, we do put in a 55-year affordability restriction on the city agreement. We have other restrictions that will be leveled on with the other funders. So the tax credit will have its own affordability restriction that will have its own timeline and its own requirements. So with this restriction, what we're able to do is pancake, if you will, restrictions on top of restrictions. Eden is a nonprofit affordable housing developer that does not sell its property. So it's our intention for it to remain affordable. We set the year restrictions based upon what our lenders and our investors underwrite in how we sell the tax credits out to the market to create the equity, which is the gap needed to build the project. So that's how we size the year, if you will, on city agreements. And then other lenders, depending on what their, excuse me, depending on what their requirements are, they won't be any less. Sometimes they're more. But that really does depend on the type of funding and what we've got that we will eventually use on this project. So tax credits at the current time under current state law are 55 years.
Okay, so that's not to say though, Dixie, that, after 55 years after certificate of occupancy, that this project is not going to continue to be affordable.
It has not been our experience in our portfolio. We typically recapitalize our projects at year 25 when you see them getting a little dated, in need of rehab. And that is when the affordability restrictions reset. So they keep resetting and resetting and resetting. We would assume that the city would also reset as well during that time, which is pretty typical, that the city's agreements would follow the timeline of the project, particularly if there's any future financial contribution from the city. One never knows. If in year 40 you're rebuilding the whole thing and you need to raise money, maybe the city, throws in a couple of dollars for that, then it's a whole nother discussion. So it can get really weedy and tricky, but no, we typically have seen, I think we're in our 4th generation of our projects resetting. So that's pretty cool.
Okay, thank you. I do have more questions for you, Dixie, if
Sure.
you don't mind.
Nope, not at all.
Under the DA agreement, it does say that you anticipate to file initial applications for construction financing for this site. So have you begun that, or is that just you're anticipating to sometime in the near future?
To be determined. We are working on, with our approval a few weeks ago, we are working on getting this first project ready for its first application in March or April of next year.
I know it's a pretty competitive process to go ahead and go through the affordable housing with LIHTC credits, and that's a whole animal within itself. How long do you anticipate, since you're saying next year in March or April, getting that application in with the state and whatever other agencies you have to, how long before you would get that financing secured?
Well, let's assume we're going to be successful on that first application. That's always my assumption. When you file the application, it'll take 90 days for the application, if we score high enough, to get to what's called allocated credits, bonds and credits. That date of allocation that the state agency makes the allocation, that's the official award of tax credits and bonds. we would then have 180 days to close our construction and pull our building permit. So we're really on a tight timeline at allocation and award. There have been times, particularly in the last couple of years, where we have had to apply 2 or 3 times for bonds. And so typically, there are 2 rounds per year. In 2025, there were 3 rounds. So it really does depend on what's happening with the state budget, whether or not there's a deficit, whether or not there are unused bonding authority, if you will. So there was some leftover bonding authority last year, and so that brought up a first round that was unexpected. So it's very opportunistic. What we know we have to do is we have to be ready, and readiness means we have to be entitled, which we are now, and we have to start our construction documents and be building permit ready. And that is where we are beginning now. We are in what's called design development so that we can be on the ready. And sometimes in this particular geographic area, the way the bonds and the credits are allocated is by geographic region, and really there's a huge financial gap that many projects have to overcome, and there's very little state money out there, so there are a lot of affordable housing projects that are on the shelf right now. I'm not prepared to publicly discuss our financing plan for this one, but it doesn't, our financing plan isn't reliant upon state soft funding.
Okay. So, Dixie, to go back to some of the information you provided, which it sounds like a very arduous process, and I know it's very competitive. Best case scenario, if you get funding on the first round, when would you expect to start rough grading the site? Like a year after?
No, on the timeline, the closing requirement-ish would be, with 50, May, April, would be a October or November must close by. And then after you close, you have 5 days, 5 days required from the lender to pull that permit and get a shovel in the ground. We are not messing around. So we could very well be under construction by the 4th quarter of next year.
Okay. So October, November of 2026.
Yeah, it really does depend on how fast you can get through that closing period, and also what's going on in the international finance markets. It's a little bit of a heartbeat monitor right now where it changes several times a day and it's a little unpredictable. So if we're on the current trajectory, we've got a very good feasible plan. If interest rates rise again, if insurance continues to escalate, we have to take a look at things. It doesn't necessarily mean the project is infeasible, but it does mean we need to sharpen a pencil and do some value engineering and do some other financial engineering to continue to be financially feasible.
And you said that, there's a lot of other affordable projects that are on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
The best case scenario would be October, November to go ahead and start the grading of the site.
Sure.
But then realistically speaking, you may not get approval within this first round of making, the application and so forth. So would you say maybe would you give that like a 2-year time frame to potentially start more realistically?
No, we're pretty optimistic with a couple of application rounds next year. This geographic location puts us in a very distinct advantage, particularly with how it's characterized as a highest resource area. So it makes it a little bit easier. That means we kind of go to the front of the class. We've designed it in a sense to where it can either be built in 1 phase or 2 phases. It's our desire and we will be applying as one phase in the first round. And then at that point, we'll be able to see what the 2026 competition looks like, because we know some of those projects will fall in, fall out. So me and my staff study all of the applications so that we know how we need to pivot to become even more competitive. So we're pretty nimble and pretty up to the minute on that stuff. But we know we'll have at least 2 bites of the apple next year. We're hoping we only need 1 apple bite. Yeah.
That's really good to
But
hear.
if not, we just keep going in 2027. We just don't stop until we're funded. So we do not stop.
And I mean, I guess just in your experience speaking on Eden's behalf, have you, ever walked away from a deal where you're just like, we couldn't get the funding, we just couldn't make this pencil in?
Never. We broke ground 3 weeks ago on a project that we have been working on for 22 years in Richmond. We have never walked away from a project.
Oh, wow. That says a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have.
Want to know my fastest breaking ground?
Sure.
I mean, come on. When I joined Eden, we bought a piece of property in Fremont that was ready to go. And from purchase to financing, we broke ground in 9 months.
Oh, wow. That's really good. I guess, Dixie, I do have another question. Since this site is two, but it sounds, 2 buildings, the senior and then, all ages. It sounds like it says you went ahead and applied for it in one phase. So you would start the construction of those 2 buildings at the same time.
That's correct. They would likely be under 2 building permits because one would have to be designated as age restricted, if you will. So there's some fair housing things that we have to make sure of. So we'll at least be pulling 2 building permits, even if they are under one single ownership entity. So it's very flexible the way we have this kind of designed and engineered. Very flexible to be able to jump with the time or not. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a couple more questions for Lauren.
Sure.
Okay. So under section 7.3, insubstantial amendments, it says here that any amendments to the development agreement which do not relate to A, the term as provided in section 5.2, or B, the affordable housing requirements as provided in section 6 may be approved by the city manager without a public hearing before either the planning commission or city council. Is it typical that you guys have a provision within the DA that kind of allows you to bypass the initial public hearing body?
Yeah,
Council.
it is pretty typical because for minor amendments, like if there was an error in the document or a cleanup to legal description or something like that, you can do it. If you looked at the next item, the city walk agreements, you'll notice that one's amendment 2 and one's amendment 3, and there have been some minor changes that were done administratively. So it's a standard practice for the city. And again, it's kind of a judgment call at what point, we feel the need to kick it up. And, obviously, if it's something of community concern, it's in our best interest to make it a public hearing process.
Okay. And then section 13.1 on right to assign. It says developer has the right to sell or transfer all or a portion of the covered sites in the BR affordable housing site to any wholly owned I can't say that word.
Subsidiary.
Subsidiary of developer or to assign its interest in this agreement that pertains to such portion of the property sold or transferred without city approval. Can you kind of go over what that means? When I read that, I read it to mean that the developer can transfer units to another site if they wish to, like for BR7 and 11 and a portion of City Walk.
No, what it's referring to is the ability to transfer portions of the properties. So for example, BR7 has been purchased by KB Homes. Uh, Avalon Bay will ultimately purchase the 3A site. I don't know if Related's purchased theirs yet, but the point is, once this agreement is set in place and those commitments are made, the rights associated with this agreement can be transferred to the people that purchase properties that are subject to this agreement. So they have the rights to continue to go through this property, because right now this agreement is between the city and Sunset Development.
Okay. And then my other question for you was, when, there's that provision in the DA that's talks about the impact fees being paid, we don't know what that amount would be. And then the rough grading, is it not necessarily like in terms of like having all the improvements and all the utilities, so then if someone does walk away from the deal, that another developer can come and readily just build and construct the properties? Because rough grading a site is expensive, but it's not that like I kind of just want to make sure that so BR7 and BR11 were, expected to go ahead and have 15% affordability, and that includes moderate. So, realistically speaking, like if this doesn't pan out, is this still going to work for the city? Like realistically speaking, if we're asking for $3,000 per unit with 1.1 million, like how many units are we going to be able to build? Not very many at all.
Again, the intent of that fee is not to build units, it's to support the housing fund and programs that go into that. It could be used for down payment assistance, it could be used for staffing costs, it could be used for other incentive programs that just help support the overall mission of the housing program. The value of the land is what helps subsidize the development of these 100 affordable projects. And so that, as well as the fee waiver that we talk about, are incentives to bring people in and make a project that's more economically viable. And so again, it's not that we're gonna somehow use that $1.1 million to build this. That's really not the intent of that fee. It's just an added incentive to help the city promote housing in the city. The rough grading and the impact fees is a way of just making sure that there's incentives for projects going forward. That's one less thing that a new developer would have to do for the site. And the payment of impact fees can be significant, depending on the nature of the fee and how the fees escalate over time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any more or for now? Commissioner Avila, are you done for now?
Yeah, I'm done for now. I just wanted to make sure that, with the affordable housing that we're, if they don't build BR7 and BR11, I just want to make sure that somehow that's passed over and we can, and typically that would be an affordable housing in lieu fee where, hey, if this defaults, we can always secure this amount of funding, which a lot of cities do. So I just want to make sure that
Okay,
it's tit for tat.
got it. Okay, okay. Additional questions? You have, Commissioner Kundula.
So I'm going back to Dixie and just clarifying a couple of things. So you mentioned BR1A had 383 units
Yes.
and BR3A had 457.
56.
56. So it would be,
Excuse me, 456.
so 456 plus 383, that we would be giving out more than uh,
Keep in mind, not all of the affordable units associated with those two projects are going to be accommodated by the receiver site of Edenhausen site.
that is exactly my point. So that is 839 units.
Right, there's still an obligation to build some of those units either on the site or make other arrangements for those units. It's not covering it all. And that was my point in mentioning that earlier, is that it's a portion of it, and that's where the sort of the first come, first serve, or however the developer or the applicant chooses to assign those units.
So approximately 30 units, we are falling short even after 198 units of
And
affordable housing.
Yes, and I just want, it's not that we're falling short, there's
No,
still a requirement.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just not associated with this agreement. I just also want to emphasize that there is a provision that requires that those prior approvals be revisited. So the planning commission will get another look at how to address those units and whether 100% of relateds are being transferred over, 100% of Avalons, or whether, they're going to 50% from each and they'll build 50%. All that will be negotiated and is required to be approved for those prior project approvals. And so it's not, this isn't the end of the process. This is open a framework for which we can proceed with some of these other next steps that come along. It opens the door for the option.
And absolutely, you're gonna go and revisit the density bonus stuff
Right.
and other related stuff for
yeah.
each of the project. Again, going back to BR 7, 11, 1A, 3A,
Yeah.
each and everything.
Any project that received a density bonus, that got concessions and waivers, is not allowed to transfer units off site. So part of that review for those prior approvals would be to address any of the issues that were applied for under density bonus, whether it was a parking reduction or whether it was a development standard change. So there may be some revisions to those projects in order to accommodate it. There may be shared parking arrangements, there may be other things, but it would have to be addressed through the reapproval or the reapproval of those prior projects and modification of the conditions, as well as the modification to the affordable housing conditions associated with those projects.
Okay, thank you. Good more? Sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And following up on Ms. Avila's question, the $3,000 amount for each of the unit, which would be 385 units for BR 7 and 11. So is there none for 1A and 3A?
There are none for 1A and 3A. Currently, this additional payment is associated with the change from the for sale to rental and also the change from the moderate income to low and very low. So it's only associated with 7 and 11. Because the other ones are rental to rental.
Rental.
And there is a slight increase in the unit to 16% instead of 15. So there is a little bit extra there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for the questions. I do also have a couple. I don't know if I can. Back in February, let me start with Mr. Barr first. A development agreement. Just back up, you talked about it being discretionary. You talked about it being essentially a business deal between the city and the applicant, negotiated by city staff and, and the applicant. Could you summarize what is it the Planning Commission's role is in this process? It's not quite the same as a development agreement. The city council hasn't delegated authority to negotiate a deal. Can you just tell us what is our role in this process?
Well, so part of this, clearly the Planning Commission's been involved with the approval of all these projects. And there's a requirement here that you're going to have to revisit these project approvals. So that's part of your your consideration and understanding of the context of this agreement. This concept of promoting the consolidation of units is something that's been floating around for the better part of a year. It was daylighted back with a few of these approvals, and it's finally gotten to the point where it was approved, and now we can talk about development agreements. So the role of the commission is you're actually an advisory body to the city council. And so we've brought forward a development agreement that has some terms and conditions associated with it. We're asking for feedback. We're asking for a public hearing for public input. And then ultimately, we're looking for a recommendation going to the city council so that they can proceed with adopting an ordinance and codifying this arrangement for the long term.
Thank you. That does help. Thank you. And then reviewing the chapter on development agreements of the zoning ordinance that it talks about the commission's role, it said exactly what you said. It really is a recommendation to the city council. And is the recommendation either adopt or reject, or is there someplace in between, with suggestion to continue negotiating, or should it have, all that be done before we make a recommendation at the end?
Well, the current resolution is set up to go as proposed. There is the ability for you to recommend amendments. If there's something in your opinion that is not correct or change, it should be changed. That's all part of the consideration. Depending on whether that is acceptable to the other party, there may have to be additional discussions and negotiations before moving forward with something like that.
Okay.
But again, we're kind of coming with an idea that was mutually agreed to. And so if there are significant changes, we have to re-engage those discussions.
Okay. Okay. Is the approval, thank you for that. Is the approval of a development agreement subject to a number of hearings similar to a general plan or an SB 330 project, or is there a?
No, there's not an SB 3 hearing limitation. These projects were submitted within 2 months. And so they're early in the process. They have been deemed complete and are ready for processing, but no, there's not a specific time.
Okay. And I think
other than permit streamlining and other things. But
sure. And I think I read in the chapter on development agreements, there are some timeframes on when the city has to respond and when we have to respond and when it gets reviewed and things like that. I'm going to assume we're in that window still and we're not up against a strict time frame. Today it must be, a vote must be taken tonight if the rest of the commission feels that we need to have further discussion. Is that fair?
yeah, I mean, we're within the permit streamlining provisions. And as I mentioned, these are fairly recent applications that are, moving fairly quickly.
Okay. I hate to bounce back and forth, but this is very complicated. So I might have to bounce back with it. So we have heard about this and I'm trying to remember the very first time we were introduced to the concept of an affordable housing agreement, and looking back, I think it was mentioned as we heard, probably the first time maybe with BR7, maybe with 1A or 3A, but it's been many months, it's safe to say.
I think it was 7 probably.
Right. And then we did have Sunset did, because we were all struggling with the concept back on February 25th, 2025, we got a pretty thorough memo that I'm going to assume that Ms. Hill had a hand in putting together, but we all read it, and it actually discussed the entire concept of, what we're discussing tonight, and actually a little bit more, because it highlighted at the time 8 and 12 and additional affordable housing. So my question is, why are we not addressing the sum total of what Sunset shared as the vision for affordable housing and these projects tonight versus knowing we're going to have another round of this down the road? Well,
I think it would be fair to say that the agreements that are being negotiated will become a template for future agreements. The issue is whether or not there's enough clarity as to the other projects. As you're aware, Bishop Ranch 8, which has an affordable housing component, has yet to be approved. It's under review right now. The Orchards project, which also will have an affordable component,
Mhm.
is still under review as well. And so there's less certainty in terms of what the product's going to be. And so, part of the reason we waited on the development agreement was so that you knew what Eden was going to be. And so you can speak in an informed way to what the end result
Right.
is anticipated to be.
Right. I'm sensing that some of our collective confusion on 1A and 3A and what fits in, might be a function of the fact that we're, not quite there yet, but that helps. I think we've talked a little bit, we've had questions about the fee per translating in for sale unit to a rental unit, and the fee, if I can paraphrase, it was really, it's a negotiated dollar amount. There's not been a fee study. There's nothing in the fee schedule. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
There's no specific criteria that it was set to. There's not a square footage standard or anything like that.
Okay, so it is okay. Have other cities or communities or even San Ramon in the past structured an agreement similar to this that we can point to that says, previously the city charged this amount and now it's this amount, not fee, or contribution, I shouldn't say charged, but that there's a voluntary contribution previously that we can look at as perhaps being kind of a precedent set?
I don't know that there's an apples to apples comparison. There have been projects where fees have been collected instead of the construction of affordable units. There have been projects that have had down payment assistant programs where if they've not taken advantage of the money reverts to the city. That was that Acre project had provisions like that. So I'm not sure that I have a city example unless Debbie or Cindy can think of one. But there's also, I can't speak for other jurisdictions either. I'm not
Okay.
just privy to that information. So,
It's good to be first.
well, I doubt we're first. It's just, again,
It's okay to be early. It's okay. Thank you for that. Shifting and kind of bouncing around, I apologize. The current projects that were approved, 7, 11, 1A and 3A, they all had a very low and moderate income. No.
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 The for sale projects, 7 and 11 had the very low, and moderate. The rental projects are low and very low.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for that clarification. So is it correct that when we transfer the units from 1A and 3A, ignore the number that we're going to, we will not, because Eden doesn't do moderate income units, so that they'll go from some number of moderate at 1A or at 7 or 11 to 0. Is that true?
This particular approval is a blended rate that will exceed or will be low and very low income. But I can't really speak to, I'll let Dixie speak as to whether they ever do moderate. But this particular proposal, and I would say in an effort to be more competitive, a higher affordability level makes them more competitive for funding sources. But I don't know if there's something more you'd like to add.
Thank you for the question. Opportunity to geek out here on you again. I love it. In order for us to get tax credits and bonds, we must maintain an average AMI, if you will, of the rents at no more than 60% AMI. Mathematically, it's possible to have rents from a scale of 30% AMI to 80%, only a smattering of 80%. Or 70%. So the average can't go over 60%, or we cannot get tax credits.
Okay. And I believe 60% is what typically gets considered low. Is that
No,
correct?
low is 80, I think.
80. Low is 80. Okay.
Yeah.
So moderate is 80. Is that the 80?
Yeah,
120?
moderate is something 81
80.
to 140. It depends on
Okay.
on how. Yeah,
Okay.
we
Okay.
can't get tax credits for anything that goes above that percentage.
Okay.
They would be called mixed income projects. Do they get done? Yes, they do. Eden does not.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And I think you might have explained that once before to us, so thank you. So my question with that better understanding is the city has an obligation under its RENA obligation to provide all the income levels. And we are, I hate to use the right phrase, we are not getting any of that category from these projects. How does that, how will that, or how does that play out into our ability to fully meet our RENA commitment? And the second part of that question is when we do our no net loss calculation, how does that play in?
Okay, so there's a couple of things to consider. One is if you look at the RENA allocation, it's heavily weighted to low and very low income. So we have a higher requirement or a more challenging requirement to meet those lower income units. Keep in mind that this isn't the case for all units being developed. There are other projects in the city that are not within the core, not subject to this agreement, that will be producing moderate units. An example would be the 500 Deerwood, 2481 Deerwood, the Iron Horse Village. And so, again, we'll be able to make up those units through other projects that come in. With regard to the no net loss issue, one of the advantages that this particular receiver site, the Eden project, is it wasn't a housing opportunity site. And so that basically helps cushion our numbers because the increase in unit numbers is basically a credit. And so we're helping to meet our obligation based on numbers that weren't assumed in our tables.
Great. Okay. Thank you. That, I think that explains what I was trying to get to.
And through the chair, if I can add, if I recall from the BR11 no net loss table, in regards to our moderate income units, our remaining RENA for moderate is just a little above 500.
I thought we were doing
We've
pretty
done
well.
quite well on
Quite
moderate.
well,
So,
yeah.
to really weight to the low and the very low, as Mr. Barr said, is a tremendous opportunity for the city to really make a lot of progress in that area.
Thank you for that. And I recall that we're doing well in that one category, and that's the category that we seem to always do okay in.
Yeah.
So just wanted to make sure that when we do our mid-cycle review, that we're not going to be on anybody's naughty list. So it sounds like we will not. Okay. I think that this might be a question for Sunset / maybe Eden. And I appreciate the complexity of funding projects anywhere, but especially the affordable projects. And then the timing and the delicate dance with every other state. If you were to overlay the 7, 11, 1A or 3A timeline with the Eden timeline, are they roughly in parallel? Or are we going to be, how do you envision all of those things sort of dovetailing in there?
I can guess if you like, but
The magic 8 ball says.
This is a great question, and we're always trying to predict how quickly can we build housing. And with BR1A and BR3A, as many of the commissioners know, they've been approved for a while. And we've been in a really difficult financing market with high interest rates and with tariffs. And so one of the benefits of shifting from City Walk into Eden's affordable community is it improves financial feasibility so that we can get one and or both of those City Walk developments going. If we think about different housing typologies and how long it takes to build something, specifically with BR1A and BR3A, those communities have very large parking structures, and they take anywhere from 24 to 30 months to build from when you initially put a shovel in the ground. And then they typically take about 12 to 14 months to fully occupy a building. And so we're looking at from shovels in the ground to fully occupied residential building, you're looking in that 4 to 5 year time range. If we look at the Bishop Branch 7 and Bishop Branch 11, and we use City Village as a model for how long it takes, most of those for sale communities are built over phases. And so it will take 2 to 3 years to deliver the 200 units, 300 units that we're looking at between those two communities. And prior to putting shovels in the ground, you have about 12 to 18 months of coordination and demolition and putting in your infrastructure, your water, your joint trench, your underground utilities, which support those developments. So that really factored into the 5-year term that we're looking at with the development agreement, where Eden, we certainly hope that Dixie's Magic Financing Plan has her with shovels in the ground by end of next year. I think that would be a wild success. But when we look to that 5-year term, we're looking at that generally aligns with when we would expect that homes are being delivered at Bishop Branch 7, Bishop Branch 11, and at least hopefully both of the City Walk developments, but perhaps one of them. And that's a good checkpoint of how do we ensure that the affordable housing is being developed concurrently with the covered sites?
Great. Okay, thank you for that. Our current housing plan is good till 2031, is that right? Okay, well. 5 years is a blink of an eye. Okay, I think that is it for my questions, and then.
Public comment?
Yeah. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to open public comment on this item. Madam Clerk, do we have any?
I have no speaker cards or written communication for this item.
Great. Okay, then I would like to go ahead and close public comment. Thank you. At this time, I think, obviously, if you thought of other questions, other questions are certainly welcome at this point. But primarily, I think what we'd like to make sure that we provide is if there are specific things that we feel that we need, but we don't have, let's make sure that we clarify that, and if there's nothing, we have been asked to adopt a resolution, although as Mr. Barr said, that if there are things that are important for us to know before we feel comfortable just passing it on to City Council, let's make sure that we leave this discussion with clear guidance to staff on that. So with that, if somebody wants to go first, please go ahead. Do you want to? Do you feel like you're ready to go first?
Thank you. So the one thing that you have said here tonight that I find most troubling is the idea that if this swap between BR7 and BR11 does not happen, then the funds that you will be using to donate the land to Eden Housing falls through. Eden Housing is gone. I'm troubled for a couple of things because we just approved that project, and that I think there was the piece of information that would have been nice to have known back then. So I'm a little troubled by that. I'm still quite concerned that we have this concept in our inclusionary housing that is very clear that it says that inclusionary housing should be part of the developments. It should look the same. It should be basically, in my words, indistinguishable from the rest of the units. But yet we have this shift here that we're going to have 4 different projects just completely change the way that the city has looked at affordable housing, the look and feel of neighborhoods, that kind of stuff. I find that troubling, and I find it hard to feel like I understand this what we've been asked to look at here tonight sufficiently. There are so many references to other agreements, other events, that I don't feel like, as a member on this commission who sat through all of those meetings and all of those approvals, that I feel confident that this is the right direction. You haven't addressed why you went from the affordable 15% requirement to a 22.5%. So, I mean, there's a lot here that we're seeing for the very first time. with a lot of implications that will set a precedence. Like, for example, are there any other cities that are doing this, that have a similar inclusionary housing? I hear the compelling reasons that Sunset is providing. And I certainly see that they have the depth and breadth to do a lot of research and looking into this. And I just wanted to make sure that I feel, as a commissioner, that I feel comfortable in that we have done a similar depth and breadth. Please do not infer that I am doubting the staff's efforts on this, because I know this has been going on. But as these are written, there's a lot of things in the language of this that seem unusual, and we've not seen it before in my 6 years on this commission. And I would actually, I would encourage us to make, I would prefer to see this again, and to have that opportunity to have more one-on-ones as needed. We have a brand new commissioner here tonight. This is a big deal. And I know you explained it in ways that staff and developers understand. We're not them. And so we need, I'm not comfortable in saying that we can make a decision on this tonight. And I would actually, my preference would be to offer a motion to postpone making a decision, and to have that opportunity to really sit down and plow through this in a way that I don't think we've had an opportunity to do this.
Okay. And we can have a chance to make sure we've given direction to staff on what additional information will be helpful to make a decision. So keep that in mind as we're talking about. Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Vila, do you have?
Through the chair, we have a motion on the floor.
Oh, she was willing to make a motion, and I don't know that she made a motion.
Have a motion, or are you willing to
Oh.
make any?
Just going to let everybody else weigh in first.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Yes.
I feel similar to Commissioner Kuznick, who just spoke on the matter. I think there's a lot of things that are going on, and a lot of if this, then that, but then this too. And it just all kind of gets a little muddled and confusing. One of the things that I was, had a really, I don't know, I can't say this, is from turning that for sale housing to rental housing, what is appropriate financially? Can there be some sort of financial analysis that can be undertaken so we see we're getting, equitable, some sort of consultant to go ahead and look at this? Because I can't say that I could speak to this on a financial level. I just want it to make sense economically for the city, and we want to go ahead and see that affordable housing being built and developed. And we want to also see that, if there is a failure to perform, that it makes sense for somebody to step in and be able to develop, something, if Eden Housing doesn't have the opportunity to do so. So I just want to see things like some sort of fiscal analysis that's completed that just shows that the city's not being shortchanged. If, in the long term, if the affordable housing project doesn't get built, or, Eden Housing or whoever goes ahead and inherits the project can actually make it work. Yeah, and then the other thing was, I understand that the city is working on the Nexus study for the affordable housing in Luffy. So I think that's a little bit more straightforward. Obviously, we want to see the projects being built and not just kind of go into a fund and then never see that come to fruition. But I think that would also kind of clear up some things.
Just to comment briefly, is part of the reason we're looking to build units as opposed to fee out units. The fallback position, the surety position, isn't to be necessarily cash neutral. It's to provide another means of getting units built. And so that's why the dedication of land back to the city, the impact fees and things like that, is to make the site desirable for another developer, the city, or whoever to actually build units. We mentioned the Nexus fee. That's the prior fee that we had didn't come close to even covering construction costs for any units. And so it's problematic to rely on feeing out as a way of compensating for units, because you never get those units back. They're gone. And so we're looking at opportunities to open the door for units. We have an approved project, a capable affordable housing developer, and a path forward. The thing that we're fighting against is uncertainty. We don't know 100% what's going to happen. State funding, local funding, economics. And so we try and put some safeguards in there. But again, it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen in 2 years from now. And so we are trying our best to provide enough incentives and surety to move forward with it. And then just one quick comment regarding the notion of the inclusionary housing standards and being able to, spread units out throughout the projects. That is a desire for units being constructed, but we also have provisions that allow for the alternative compliance and consideration of the benefits that come from consolidating projects into affordable housing units such as this one. There's a lot of upside to it. There's a lot of challenges with for sale units in terms of the carrying costs that an affordable house has to deal with. So those are all things that, it's part of the learning curve that we've been going through over the last 10 years as we've been building these units and trying to comply with state law. And so, again, I don't have a blueprint that's perfect for any of this stuff, but I think it's something that, we are optimistic that given the parties involved and the terms that have been negotiated, that we can come forward with something that's actually doable. And I understand the concerns about the commission's concerns about, understanding what's going on. It is a complex thing, a lot of legalese involved. And so that's just my response to this point.
Yeah, and to speak to you, Lauren, like you make really good points. I just want a worst case scenario more than anything. I know the commission approved this Eden housing site, just a couple of months ago. So more than anything, we do want to see it get built. But it's look at BR1A and BR3A that still have yet to be built. We just want to make sure that, hey, if this pans out, that it's in the best interest for the city and the people, and we want to see that affordable housing being built. Just want to make sure that it makes sense if things don't happen the way we would want them to.
I understand.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Very many valid points that have been said. I have 4 points that I want to share, and probably that would give a direction both to the city staff. And one, the chair has brought up a good point looking at city fees, not just, I know this is early or the very first time we are doing this. Are there any other innovative ways that we can assure completion guarantee and any penalties or bonds that I have worked at or looked at in previous developments where they have a failure to perform, there is a bond at the end of the project, and that would assure that Eden housing would be completed. There is a big bond amount saying that this will be completed. So that is one thing within a certain timeline that would really help if we get those directions, and if we can think of an innovative way, we can incorporate that into the DA. So that could be one thing. And I just want to get some clarity on the land dedication 2453 Camino Ramon. I know land is very expensive, and looking at how you're going to get everything ready for that project for the Eden housing. I want to know specifically how much is the area 2453 that is being given to Eden housing, and how much would it be the cost benefit analysis if other than Eden housing, somebody else is going to take it up? So that's the second point that I want to see if city staff can help with. And personally, I am not one way or another. I don't mind transfer of ownership or consolidation to one location. That could be, if it is convenient for the builder and it would help their finances and also help the city, that's absolutely great for everyone, win-win scenario. But and if it is moving from ownership to rental, that could be better from my perspective, and I'm okay with those feasibilities. One point Chair has brought up, the fourth point that I want to bring is not just looking at the existing BR7, BR11, 1A and 3A. If we can holistically look at this entire project and see if the affordable housing can be estimated for the entire BR8 and BR13 and the entire project. I know this is the first step that you guys are trying to make path, but the holistic view, I think, would give us better understanding as well. So those are my 4 points. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let me preface this. We have heard an awful lot of this, so I deeply sympathize with our brand new commissioners on trying to absorb all this tonight. And I think you've all done a fabulous job sifting through this and asking really terrific questions. It is very complicated, and we've been learning about this in, every couple of weeks for several months. So it's hard to pick up this so quickly. But with that said, I also have a strong sense that we do need more information or would like to look at this again. And I'm going to be with you as well. And I think most of the comments, I will put my own flavor on it. We've all talked about some way to walk away on the in lieu fee structure or contribution fee that we feel comfortable that sending to city council, that we understand where it's coming from and we support it. That's our job. How we get there, there's a lot of different paths, but I think I've heard that multiple times. I think clearly understanding the numbers, and I think we've seen, it's a complicated topic. I think we're starting to get there. It's really hard to do the math at the dais. And I think we've seen various versions of tables and matrices of how this stuff is presented. I think seeing it all together with, really similar to the 225 memo from Sunset was very helpful to me to understand the sum total. Where I think I'm struggling a little bit, and it's item 6.1 covered sites. It is anticipated that the affordable housing units generated by the land dedication will be insufficient to cover the entire City Walk housing obligation. If there is a shortfall, the City Walk sites must either be developed or, something else. So we know that it's not an if, that there is a shortfall, and we know that. So attempting to tighten up the language on this, and I'll throw out a concept of some sort, because I know we haven't approved BR8 or 12. We don't know what they're going to look like. We don't know when they're going to be built, but we know that something's going to be built, and we know that something's going to happen in the future. Perhaps there could be, rather than 15% or 16% or 22.5%, perhaps it's a conversion ratio for every affordable apartment that's transferred to a dedicated apartment site. Sunset or the accepting site will provide more than one, 1.5. So if 8 turns out to be 1,000 units, then it's not 1,500, it's 1.5 of 150 or something. So it's just math at that point, and it gives us the flexibility and I think Sunset the flexibility to move forward as they normally would. And we know with predictability for the city, and on the for sale units, maybe the ratio is 1.25 or 1.75, but just something that we can put in the agreement, I think that will last longer than just the subset of the projects. We know there's more to come. So that would be just as an idea to perhaps, deal with all of the uncertainty that's out there, And then the last thing I heard, which I think I do agree, and we just need to understand it and ensure that city attorney, city staff, and the applicant have really thought through all of the what ifs, and it's captured sufficiently in the development agreement. And it may very well have gone through that process, but we're not comfortable tonight with that. So I think those are my comments and direction to staff on what I think will help us be able to, make a more informed, thoughtful, comfortable decision at our next hearing. Before I turn to staff and ask for directions on next steps, are there any other comments that we'd like to share tonight? No. Okay. And then I forget, is this the type of hearing that we allow Sunset or Eden to say any other comments back at this point,
Well, you may, but since it sounds like there's going to be a continuance, Sunset will have the ability to respond
Certainly.
through additional conversations and
Mhm.
proposals or communication.
Mhm.
So what we'll need to decide on is the next date
Okay.
for a continuance. I'm looking to the audience members, Stephanie and Lauren. August 5th, possibly. Or July 15th. Okay. Yeah, we can try and see if we can put something together. Okay. Yeah, so let's go with July 15th.
Okay, so the recommendation is to continue to date certain the July 15 meeting, is that right?
That would be correct.
Okay, so could we have a motion to continue yeah,
Can I ask a clarifying question to staff? Sorry, this is coming from left field. Because the second round of development amendments is tied to these projects.
They're not though. BR8 is entirely separate.
Okay.
So this agreement only covers the Eden site and those 4 projects that potentially will contribute units to Eden.
Okay.
So BR8, BR12 in and of itself is a completely separate animal because they're meeting their affordability requirement on site. But the BR8 affordable project and market rate project are completely separate. Will come forward separate public hearings and approvals and potentially separate development agreements. So they are completely unrelated to the discussion.
All right. Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion that we continue this to July 15th meeting to afford more opportunity to clarify the concerns that we have shared and clarifications on how we're getting here.
Mhm. May we have a second, please?
I second that motion.
Okay, it keeps, my screen just keeps, okay.
Okay, so the motion has passed 4-0-0-0, and we will continue this at our next meeting in July. Thank you for the discussion.
Do we have any, Chair, and just a point of clarification, do we have any clear outline points for the staff as well, so they can go back?
Well, I should have asked. I said to staff, are you comfortable with the questions, comments, discussion, direction to?
Yeah,
move
I
forward?
think we understand the additional support you're looking for
Okay.
For the decision.
Okay, okay. And I would encourage all of us, if you have questions or you are confused about anything, to reach out to staff and get as comfortable as you can prior to the next meeting, because as we all know, Friday to Tuesday can be a very short window. So, we generally know what is on the table. So let's take advantage of the 2-week window to chat with staff if we can. Okay, if you have questions. Certainly the ask was for a short break, so why don't we take a 5-minute break and 6-minute break? So we'll see everybody. Certainly. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break, so we'll stand and stretch. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Let's come back together here. Now, the next item is item 9.2. And 9.2 is also going to be led by a staff report by Mr. Barr.
All right, this is a companion report and resolution to the prior item related to Eden Housing Site. These are amendments to the City Walk development agreements that allow for the transfer of the units associated with the prior approved project. Given that the prior approved project was continued to the next meeting, at this point, I'd recommend that you open the public hearing take public testimony, close public hearing, and continue this item as well. If there are any questions about the actual text that's involved and there people have that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So are there clarifying questions for staff on this item? Yeah. Mr. Avila.
So within section 2 of the agreement of packet page 64, it goes ahead and says, okay, shall be reviewed by the zoning administrator as the review authority consistent with zoning ordinance section D6-23. And so it says further, such development plan applications within the City Walk Master Plan shall not be subject to a planning commission development plan concept review unless requested by the project applicant. So any modifications, so both of these would be an amendment to the development agreement that Bishop Branch 1A and 3A. If
Correct.
there's any modification to them, it would be seen by the zoning administrator unless that.
Well,
Oh, okay.
Just to be clear, our current housing element policy 22 requires us to develop a streamlining process. Under the current code, any development application such as a development plan is reviewed by the zoning administrator or at the zoning administrator's discretion kicked up to planning commission. Because this is a master plan that's already been approved, the number of units established, the layout, the option to streamline these projects exists through a zoning administrator public hearing. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't kick up projects that need additional attention, or if there's some sort of modification to parking standards or something like that that's not compliant with the codes, then it would kick up to planning commission for their approval. But again, this doesn't, it's an acknowledgement that City Walk is an approved plan. It's an acknowledgement of the state's housing or excuse me, our housing element policy that to streamline these projects, but it actually does not grant any rights that don't currently exist in terms of the approval process under our municipal code or zoning code. Because again, the authority to approve projects already lies with the zoning administrator.
Thank you.
Mr. Kuznick has an urgent need to be excused, so, go ahead.
Okay, you're gonna do.
We'll finish the meeting with three of four. So good luck with your urgent need. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I apologize for the day.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Drive safe. Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Villa, did you have any other clarifying questions for Mr. Barr?
So development plan applications, I guess, what does that necessarily mean then?
It's basically a site level project approval. Typically has layout, architecture. We go to the architectural review board as part of that process. Eden Housing, as an example, was a development plan along with some other applications. And so if it doesn't require a parcel map or a vesting tentative map, it can be approved at a zoning administrator level under a hearing. Again, nothing about that provision takes away from the ability of the zoning administrator to kick a project up if needed, nor does it take away from the planning commission or the city council's ability to call a project up for review if they think it needs additional attention. It does not eliminate the public hearing and public engagement process. That's still in place as well. It's just the hearing would be conducted by the zoning administrator instead of the planning commission. And again, it's an acknowledgement to the state that we are committed to streamlining our projects per our housing element.
Okay, and the ZA hearing, when I looked online, it happens at 1 p.m.
It varies. I don't recall. I think it's 3, yeah. 3
1
o'clock.
p.m. or 3 p.m. And do you still notice?
We notice the same for any public hearing.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Cudjoe, do you have questions, Commissioner? Commissioner, do you have any other questions, clarifying questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, okay. So I think Commissioner Avila just asked the same questions that I would have as far as the streamlining process. I would probably only, you know, I think it's clear, it has been clear, and if it's not, the zoning administrator already has authority to approve projects such as this. And the zoning administrator also has the responsibility or the authority to determine if it needs to go to the planning commission. That exists today. This is just documenting, for this project because there is a master plan that process exists. Is that fair?
It is fair, and
Mhm.
it's an acknowledgement that we're taking our housing element commitment seriously.
Right.
And by putting it into an agreement that already exists.
And I think from what my experience is, the zoning administrator also has, is more likely to send something to the planning commission than not when it's a big project. So I think we should all feel comfortable that that's, so far we've never been, I think, left out of the process if it really is something as significant as some of these things might be. So with that, sort of, my understanding, I think that makes it's completely reasonable to approve. So with that, let me open public comment. Do we have any public comment on this agenda item 9.2?
I have no speaker cards or written public comment for this item.
Great, thank you. And let's go ahead and close public comment. And as Mr. Barr said, this is tied very closely to, the previous item. So I think the only question I would have for staff is, do you feel comfortable bringing it back on the same night as the other one? Okay, so with that, if I may get a motion to continue
Just for the benefit, for my benefit especially. So, Mr. Barr and Debbie, Ms. Debbie, so you guys are gonna look at, because fee was one of the biggest concern, right? That people were talking about, right? Chair, and completion guarantee or failure to perform.
Those aren't provisions of this particular development agreement. This is only about the ability to transfer. We're on a different topic than the one you're
Okay.
raising questions about.
Okay. So regarding the 2453, even that one doesn't fall under 2453, the land dedication.
It's
That
a
doesn't
separate
fall. Okay.
application entirely.
At least can we look at from a holistic perspective, from a BR 813 perspective?
It's the BR8 applications will be coming to the planning commission in the near future. We had a study session in
Last week.
June, right? And so you'll see what those applications are about. We certainly offline can walk you through what the BR8 project is, and the commission packet is online also. So you take a look at that if you have time before we meet. But as I previously said, the BR8 is a completely separate animal from what we're discussing tonight with the Eden project side. But we certainly can meet offline with you about BR8 and talk about those projects and the numbers and things like that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and so with that, if I could ask for a motion to continue tonight's discussion on this development agreement to our next meeting, July the 15th. On my calendar.
I can raise a motion to move this item 9.2 to continue on July 15th.
Thank you. Thank you.
I second that motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. Go ahead and use the iPad to vote. Make sure you vote. I'm not seeing.
Through the chair, because Commissioner Kuznick left, I would like to take oral votes.
Okay. Sure.
Commissioner Conjula, Vice Chair Avila,
Yes.
Chair Alpert,
Aye.
motion passes.
Great. Okay, thank you. Motion passes 3-0-0-1 in this case. Okay, so that concludes our business. Our next item will go back to item 11, part 2 of item 11, which is study session, commission liaison reports, and interest items, staff reports. Why don't we go ahead and start with staff, coming attractions.
Okay, as you're aware, July 15th, we will have 2 continued public hearings related to the Bishop Ranch Affordable Housing Site and the updates to the City Walk development agreements. We also have a study session scheduled for the Orchards project, the Chevron Park. We will be doing Planning Commission liaison assignments as well, since we have a new group. Then in August, we are looking at zoning text amendments that have been working through the process for the last year or so. You've seen many of them, and so we're going to start the hearing process on those. And that relates to things such as non-retail, parking standards, beekeeping, and the like. And so we'll start that process in August, and that'll take a couple of meetings.
Right. Okay. At this time, we also always see if any of the commissioners have attended any advisory committee meetings. Obviously, you have not yet. And I don't believe you were assigned one. And so this part of the agenda is a chance to give a very short, emphasis short, update on what the committees talked about, especially things of interest to the Planning Commission, So I don't believe there were some, and as Mr. Barr said, what we will talk about next meeting is the various bodies that we do serve as liaisons to. And so, we typically assign a primary and an alternate, and we can talk about that more then. So, that's what this item typically is, and we'll talk about that. And I don't have any. The one that I do represent is the Architecture Review Board, and they did not meet since our last meeting. So that's what I would typically talk about here, or the Transportation Advisory Committee. So just for your benefit, that's what this part of the agenda is. Okay.
And how many committees or
I
commissions
think,
to be liaison with?
yeah, we'll need to wait until we look at the list, because I have some thoughts on how we might want to expand that a little bit, since there aren't as many committees as there used to be, just so we can get some more exposure and education on how things work. But I'll talk to staff about some of my thoughts on that, okay. And you can certainly go to the city's webpage and look at all the advisory committees that exist, yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. So I have nothing else, and unless anybody else has anything else, I think we can adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you all.